Happy podcasting day, everyone. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Good evening.
Happy holidays.
Good evening, good morning, happy holidays, happy everything. We're back, we got stuff to talk about. Seahawks won another game, which is a rarity this year, but they won, and that's awesome.
That is awesome.
The thing that's super interesting about this year is almost no one wants the team to tank because it doesn't help the Seahawks much at all because we don't have that first round draft pick. But, we got other things to talk about, lots of positives to talk about. I know that I was cautiously optimistic about that game and, watching it, it was a close game and there's a little bit of we kind of let them just march down that field the first drive. It's like the first time all year the Texans scored on their opening drive, and our defense did not look good, but they shored up. They did a really good job after, the second quarter, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the score looks like it was a complete beatdown, but it didn't feel like that at first. Although, even though we sputtered a bit in the first quarter, after that first drive, it was the defense actually did. Oh, right.
Yeah, they pulled it together and made it work.
I mean, I think the biggest thing was David Mills starting like 14 for 14 to start the game with like 107 yards and a touchdown.
Jesus, what is going on with this guy?
And the thing that was crazy is a lot of those throws were not like hard throws. They were throwing to guys that were open, a lot of crossing routes, a lot of guys playing
I was
zone.
going to say, like, when you're 14 for 14, but your yardage is like 103 yards, that means, you're throwing, extended handoff type stuff to build his confidence, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So, it's not as bad. If it was like 14 for 14 for like 170 yards, then I'd be like, oh, Jesus, it includes some properly downfield stuff.
And the thing is, this has like historically been a Seahawk defense where we're going to give you 3 to 7 yards, but we bet you can't complete, 70% of your passes. That's why guys like Phillip Rivers would just like destroy the Seahawks because he would take 7 yards every single time and wouldn't make a bad throw and was overly accurate. So he could just like go down the field like 5 to 7 yards at a time, and other teams like they couldn't do that.
If you're super patient and you're super accurate, that's the formula to win, right? To beat that defense. But you have to be both. You can be super accurate, but if you're like super accurate, but you're the type that decides you need to throw it down, to be a man or whatever, you need to throw the downfield sometimes. Like, that's where they get you. Or if you're just, you're content, but you miss, 1 out of 5 passes, well, one of those is going to be your third down pass, and that's our ball things.
And I think the way that it shows up the most is once it gets to the red zone. The Seahawks are now a top 5 points per game defense all of a sudden. They're not playing world beaters every single game, but I always feel like points per game is a much better representative of a good defense over like yards per game because, the Houston Texans, they got yards in that game, especially in the end, but they ended up going 4 and out to like finish the game like I feel like 3 times. So yeah, they got some yards, but they couldn't do anything with it. So credit to the defense.
You don't win or lose by yards. So points obviously is a much more accurate stat.
Did you feel at any point that, now this is when we're taking over? Now this is a Seahawks team that's going to really eat, and this is a team that's going to like take advantage of this 32nd ranked defense?
I don't know that I remember a moment necessarily, but it definitely eventually was like not. I wasn't afraid anymore. Like, okay, we got this. At some point, it was like that for sure.
It felt like one of those boxing matches when like a high-ranked guy or a champion, because of circumstances, is forced to fight an unqualified or lower-ranked opponent. And for the first few rounds, it doesn't really show up, the qualitative difference, right? You can hang with that guy for a couple of rounds. but then the power starts to knock you down. Then the endurance starts to come into play. Then all the small stuff, as it goes on and on and on, becomes more important. And by the 5th, 6th, 7th round, now you're like, oh, that's why this guy's not in his league. That's what it felt like to me. Like, yeah, for a quarter, anybody can hang with anybody, but not like we're world beaters this year, but they couldn't hang that long forever. It wasn't going to be like that. Sorry,
because
they are
score. The score was 13-16 at the half. They kick a 61-yard field goal that looked like it was going to be good from like 70 yards to end the half. And the Seahawks, scored on one play, that boomer bust on one play to Tyler Lockett to go up 16. Should have been 17, but Jason Myers is all of a sudden a bad kicker again. And
yeah, what the hell happened to him?
I don't know. We're gonna talk about that in our predictions later today. But yeah, I mean the Seahawks they're up 16-13, and then they roll off 17 more points to end the game. One touchdown on a Gerald Everett score, which I don't think he actually scored, but it wasn't definitive, and then Penny sealing the game with like a 42-yard run for another touchdown. Who, credit to Rashad Penny, he had a great game.
He did.
Woo-hoo. Yeah, he, adjusted for opponent, but still.
Right. I feel like that's kind of the caveat. The Seahawks put up a ton of points, 33 points, one of their highest scoring outputs since the beginning of the year when everyone was healthy. But they won, which I think is a positive. So,
and even though I say a caveat for opponent, but the thing is though, like late in the game, I mean, they knew we were trying to run and they still couldn't stop it. So it still counts. And it's an NFL. It's an NFL team, even though they've got rid of Hopkins, Watson doesn't play. Anybody who's good or gets paid more than $10 an hour on that team has been moved off. So, but it's an NFL quality team, really. It is.
Yeah, and if you take out Russell Wilson, actually, I'm going to add Russell Wilson because he didn't. None of them were like. They weren't designed runs, but they were all for positive yardage because Russ didn't get sacked that game, so credit to the offensive line. But they ran it, I want to say, 29 times to 28 passing attempts. So, really, really solid balance. Targets to DK Metcalf was 8. He caught 4 for 8. Tyler Lockett caught 5 for 9. DK, I know the stats don't show it, but I thought he had a really good game because he drew a flag a couple times. There was one throw that if Russ makes, he walks in for a touchdown. But I know people will look at 43 yards and think that DK didn't do enough. But I thought DK had a good game.
Yeah, and he had the touchdown called back, too.
He had a touchdown called back, which, I feel like the refs are always bad now. I mean, they shouldn't have given Gerald Everett that touchdown, but, whatever. And then the pass interference that the guy basically, as soon as he, got his hips turned, he just held onto DK's arm. DK, even with one arm, if the guy didn't slow him down, I think he could have caught that one-handed easily. It was almost like a layup catch. But Tyler Lockett doing Tyler Lockett things,
Little man's a beast.
Yeah, it's he had 3 amazing grabs, 2 that were on the sideline and that one touchdown where he just, for whatever reason.
Yeah, this is the most Tyler Lockett that Tyler Lockett has looked all year to me. Not that he's had a down year. He's over 1,000 yards already.
Yeah,
but this was his best game this season for sure.
It's got to be one of his best career games, really. I mean, if you look at it as the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had 3 touchdown games, so
right. But I mean, there were some quality catches here. I mean,
yeah. Oh, the manner in which he caught a couple of those ones. Yeah, they were all.
It's great. He runs that deep cross, especially right to left, and everybody knows it's coming. But he runs it. If you watch the all 22, he doesn't just run that route. He runs it 4 different ways, and that's why you can't stop it. It's weird.
Well, what's interesting is after Russ's injury, when he came back, they could not connect on that route because they got those looks, but Russ's touch wasn't there or the timing wasn't there. And it led to a couple of interceptions. I can't remember which of the games that they lost where they tried to go to that kind of play multiple times, and they just couldn't connect. So the fact that they can do it now, that's really promising. I feel like Russ has kind of returned to expected form, which is great for the Seahawks. Would have been nice if maybe he sat an extra game and then could have gotten a little bit healthier before then. But here we are. Yeah. Well, the Seahawks won back-to-back games for the only time in the 2021 season, and they did it in very strong fashion. The offense, defense, and special teams all looked solid as they went to town against the 32nd ranked offensive defense of the Houston Texans. A lot of credit goes to the offensive line and Rashad Penny. The team now moves on to the next game as they need to win the next 4 to end up with a plus 500 record as they travel and take on the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams just defeated the Cardinals, but they have been hit with confirmed COVID case after COVID case. 16 players have been placed on the COVID list for the Rams, 0 COVID players on the Seahawks. Sean McVay said all those players were vaccinated, which means that if they can show negative back-to-back negative results, they can play on Sunday. What kind of team will the Seahawks face? We don't know. This is the Hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. Catch us at Hawkscast.net. Go to find us on Seahawks on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast or Seahawks Forum. And Zeb, we're going to just jump into topic number 1. And what I want to know is, what are the Seahawks playing for in these last 4 games?
I think they're playing for fun. No, I think actually that is a big part of it. I do believe that these guys just love to play the game. That's why they do it. But they're also very, a professional athlete is a very competitive person. So even if, say, the playoffs are out of question, which technically they aren't yet, but even if they are, guys don't want to go out there and lose. That's not fun. Nobody has fun going out there and losing games. So they're playing to win because they enjoy it and because they have the great motivator, Pete Carroll, at the helm. He's not the kind of guy that's going to have a team quit on him. So I think that we're going to see the best this team has to give every week here on out, even if the playoffs are not going to happen.
You talk about fun, and one thing that I want to kind of bring up is in the highlights when you watch like the team on Rashad Penny's first touchdown. Once he gets to the second level, once he gets to like the linebackers, Dwayne Brown has beat his guy, and he's just like the linebackers just like beat out of the play. He just pushed him away. He couldn't do anything, and Dwayne Brown is then looking upfield. And he starts pumping his fist. You see him like wave his hands. He knows Rashad Penny is going to score that touchdown. On the 2-point conversion, it's a kind of a scramble play, but it goes to Tyler Lockett for the 2-point catch. And DK looks like he's the one that scored the touchdown. He's like throwing his fist in there, He's jumping up high. And this is such a big difference from what we saw during that losing streak. So,
that's the thing about football, right? Like the way football works, every player on that field has a job that play, and a lot of the times for the play to be successful, everybody has to do well at their job. So, a guy like Dwayne Brown, when he sees his running back heading towards that end zone, he knows him and his line did their job that play, and he has cause to celebrate. So. I think that's important, and it's good to see that. It's good to see DK get really excited for somebody else scoring a touchdown because, we've talked about this a little bit, and it kind of seems DK could maybe be one of those guys who gets angry when he's not getting the touches and that kind of thing, and he gets emotional. But to see him excited when his teammates score, I mean, that's just it, right? That's what you want your team to look like. That's the way you want your players on your team to be.
Ross, what about you? What do you see the Seahawks playing for in these final 4 games?
Redemption in a weird way. You're 3-8. You're a team that's used to winning a lot. Last year, you're NFC West champions, and a lot of people are already talking bad. And the season didn't start great, and then Russell Wilson gets hurt, and it goes from bad to worse. And out comes all of that stuff. There was even boos about on 3rd and 3 and outs. Dwayne Brown is being called over the hill, and Pete Carroll, even more than before, was hearing he should be fired. Russell Wilson's hearing, not just like, hey, we know he might trade. There's actually people going, hey, maybe we should trade him. And people are talking about, if we're going to get rid of him, we should get rid of DK Metcalf. And Rashad Penny, more than ever, is hearing how he's a bust. And so here you are. You're 3-8, and all that feels justified. But now you're 5-8, and you got a chance to change the narrative on the season to, hey, even when Russ was healthy, they weren't playing great. Maybe by the end you win some games, and each individual player's upped his rep, shown that he can still do it, or shown that he's not a bust, shown that his coaching philosophy still works. Because we're looking a lot more like Pete Carroll football weeks than we did early in the season. And maybe we even teach Russ, you know what, Russ, maybe it's okay to win by running the ball a lot, and then you make the key throws. You don't have to carry. You don't have to be Dan Fouts and Dan Marino and Peyton Manning. You can build a legacy by being just successful another way, man. That's what I think you're playing for. Each and every single person there has heard stuff said about him, except for maybe Tyler Lockett during the 3-8 period, right? And I just think that each one of them has a lot to play for now. And if you want to get a little bit cynical, yeah, some of them are going, Jesus Christ, on my resume now is I was part of a losing team this year, but I want to play next year, so I got to look good. Right. So that this team or another team brings me back next year.
Well, Ross, you kind of stole my thunder because you used narrative secondly, and you've started with redemption. I hope you were going to stay on redemption, because I was going to talk about how they could really change the narrative. But I think you are correct, and Zeb, to the same point, you are correct as well. What we're seeing out of this team is a much more engaged, much more lively team. Obviously, winning cures all, and the fashion in which they've won these 2 games has been really impressive. The question is can they carry that into these final 4 games? The Seahawks are a good enough team that they will be competitive, and they have a chance they could easily win out. I don't think they're going to lose out. Detroit, they're a pretty terrible team, but they just don't have talent. So that's the only game that I would say is like a quote-unquote easy win, as easy as you can get in the NFL, as difficult as this Houston game ended up being. The Bears are a young team. I think they have bad coaching, which really limits them. And that's a huge problem, I think, across the NFL. But then you've got the Cardinals and the Rams. So what they're playing for beyond, ending the season on a high and, increasing or decreasing the value of the draft pick they gave to the Jets, what they're really playing for is, can they show that what they were in the previous 11 games is not true for what they are now? And I would have to say, yeah, what they've shown over these last 2 games is almost nothing like what we saw against Washington, against Green Bay, against any of these other teams that they lost to. So the hope is that, they can build off of this, and what I think they're playing for is they do want to change that narrative. They're going to have fun doing it because, I feel like they have a lot of characters. They have players that still play for each other. But the biggest thing about that narrative is, if they can finish the year in these last 4 games and win out, it'll be a win against the Rams, it'll be a win against the Bears, one will be Detroit, the Lions, and it'll be against the Cardinals. 2 of those teams are playoff teams. And even though they're division rivals, if they can get those 2 wins to go 4-0, I think that will really change the narrative of what Pete Carroll is. Because what you could easily say is, the Seahawks went 1-2 in the games that Russell Wilson lost. If they go 2-1, or Russ is there and they go 2-1 in those same games, that's a 10-win season, and that's maybe a playoff push. So we'll see if they are still going to keep those playoff hopes alive. But I really think what you said, Ross, is true. It's that narrative. That's what they're playing for. They're trying to show that this is what they are and who they were going to be all year long, if not for all the craziness that obviously happened.
Benefits from not playing well on the field, so one of you guys mentioned playing for a job next year. I think that's also a big thing. Younger guys who are maybe looking for their first big contract, they've got reason to go out there and give it everything they have.
Yeah, the Seahawks have quite a few key players that they need to really think about what their future holds. DJ Reed is a huge. Quandre Diggs is huge. They could obviously franchise one of those guys at a huge cost. Rashad Penny, depending on what he shows in these next 4 weeks, he's a free agent. Brandon Shell is a free agent. There are quite a few people on this team that they will.
Brandon's not coming back.
Who?
Brandon Shell is not coming back.
If Curry can continue to play well, then yeah.
There's been no drop off when you just brought in Mr. X from the street. Okay. So yeah. And that guy probably has more upside even, right? Because he's just at the beginning of his career. So figure Brandon is what he is. The other guy's playing maybe. I heard that Calhoun was our highest rated pass protector on Sunday. So
yeah,
which is good because when he came in the week before, it wasn't very pretty. He stood up there and he lasted the game, so good on him. But with a week of prep and knowing he was going to start, he did a solid performance. So. Yeah, like Zeb just said, and agreeing with some of what we were talking about. Some of these guys are just playing for jobs to show they belong. I really like the fact that Pete Carroll looking more like himself, talking more like himself, sounding more like himself. And, for the past 2 weeks, you can't have as much of, just Pete needs to go. Look at this garbage. If we go on a strong run, if we run the table, or if we lose just one of the rest, how are you going to sit there and tell me that Pete Carroll's had the league pass him by?
Right.
I
wish we had one more win and we were more in the thick of things. But
yeah. We're 2 games out, only 2 games out, but only 4 games to go. It's grim. But,
and a lot of teams in that 6 and 7 range. So
yeah. A lot of
the problem is the tiebreakers. That's the key point, is that we don't have a tiebreaker over New Orleans or Minnesota. So we either...
But there's hope. There's hope. Washington is currently in possession of the 3rd wild card, but they're 6 and 7, which means, overall they've already lost more than half the games, and their quarterback has flashes, but he's like a poor man's Brett Favre. So that's a lot of turnovers waiting to happen.
Yeah.
There's still, a lot of weird things have to happen, but sometimes there's just years like that where things just bounce your way. So that's not really give up yet.
Every team that's 6 and 7 is as likely to go 8 and 9 as they are 9 and 8. So all we got to do is win.
That's true.
Just take care of what you can take care of.
Right.
Be awesome.
All right. Well, that moves That moves us to topic number 2, which is Ross. I want to know: is this the season a true test of Pete's win forever philosophy? So, for those of you that don't know, Pete Carroll wrote a book called Win Forever. It was published right before he became a Seahawks head coach, I believe, right? It was written when he was at USC, and they got published in that first year, right?
Yeah. So they hurriedly added in a few Seahawks references, but yeah, it's basically USC stuff before that. Is this a test of? Obviously, and it's really, really, really funny because we talked about it earlier in the season. He looked frustrated and mad, and people interpreted it different ways. People thought he had given up, or he had just really had no idea what to do. And I consistently said, I don't think that's the case. What I think is he's mad at himself. I think he listened to a lot of stuff in the offseason and made a lot of decisions based on what stuff he didn't really necessarily believe in, but trying to be the open-minded guy and listening to other people and saying, hey, yeah, okay, maybe it is time to do these newfangled offensive things. And although, to be honest, nothing's that new under the sun. It's all cyclical. But then, Russ got hurt, and he's like, okay, well, if Geno Smith's back there, I don't have to do that. I'm going to do things my way, and we're going to do my things my way again. And we only were 1-200 Geno, but that's kind of exactly showed you why. And maybe it should show Russ, hey, dude, even under a running offense, we still need you, because it's actually opposite. You need the quarterback to make the key plays when they're absolutely needed. Geno Smith could have gone 3-0. It's just the 2 drives ended with his turnovers.
Yeah.
If Russ was in there, maybe that doesn't happen, especially classic Russ. So, Pete Carroll's come back to himself, and, he's not going to give in anything. He's not going to show any quarter. He's not going to be tempted to play a little less rough or tough. He's going to give it his all, and we'll see where it takes him.
Zeb, what about you? Like, from a philosophical standpoint of what we know of Pete Carroll, what he shares with the media and Seahawk fans all over the world, is his philosophy being put to the test?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of mentioned it in the last one. These guys are, and Pete included, and Pete especially, are world-class competitors, right? These guys do not like to lose. And, Pete's at the point in his career, like, he's not playing to keep his job. He's not doing this to worry about what he's going to do next, what team he's going to, what's the next rung in his career. He's doing this because this is what he knows, this is what he does, this is what his life has been committed to. And when the chips fall how they have for us, and things are going against you, and things are down, it's nothing is going to bring the most out of you other than your willingness to compete and to give it your all and give it your best. And that's Pete Carroll. Win forever is absolutely the thing that's keeping this team from tanking right now. 100%. This is what's important to Pete Carroll, is to win football games outside of all else. So that's what they're doing.
I think it's
that's
interesting.
What they're trying to do.
No, exactly. And I think what's interesting is there are other teams that have similar records or worse than the Seahawks. Like the Lions are a good example of that, and the Jaguars are a good example of that. We're going to face the Lions in a couple weeks. We've already beaten the Jaguars a few weeks ago. But if you were to say, like, what is Urban Meyer's coaching philosophy? If he wrote a book, what would he say? And how would it be received? And you compare that to all the noise that's coming out now, and then you have Dan Campbell, the Lions head coach, and all the stuff he said at the beginning of his tenure, which was basically, we're going to be scrappy, we're going to be dirty, and we're going to fight and claw, and that's how we're going to win. We're going to play very, very physical football. And Dan Campbell's team, while they're not very good, that seems to be the kind of team that they're trying to be. Whereas Urban Meyer's Jaguars, I really don't know what kind of football team they are. Like, they have what I think is to be a really good running back, but James Robinson doesn't seem to get a lot of touches, like, not as much as I think he should. And this is someone who doesn't even have him on his fantasy team, so...
Well, you know what they should do is they should just next year go out and recruit a bunch of 5-star recruits while their opponents only recruit 3-star recruits, and then they'll have an advantage.
Right.
Oh wait, that doesn't work in the NFL, damn it.
But
Urban Meyer's got to actually learn a whole new game.
and I think that is the credit to Pete. Pete obviously was an NFL coach before he was a college coach, and then back to the NFL. Burnfinger chiming in, he said the Jaguars have fired Urban Meyer.
What? Just now? Oh, is it because he kicked the kicker? He kicked their kicker.
Did it really happen? Is he fired?
If that really happened, that would be crazy. So
that just happened.
Ian Rappaport
where is he getting that?
Just said the Jags have fired Urban Meyer. Less than a year, Urban Meyer is out in Jacksonville. A tumultuous, controversial tenure comes to an end. Ian Rappaport, 13 seconds ago. Adam Schefter, Urban Meyer signed a 5-year deal. He didn't make it to the 1-year mark. So that's like kind of a great thing because, and that speaks to what all of us have said about Pete Carroll.
That's pretty good timing, huh?
The timing of his spot on. Well done, universe.
Breaking news here on the podcast.
Here, let me bring up Urban Meyer. Oh, now there's breaking news. Interesting.
Yeah, shout out to Birdfinger for putting that on the chat.
Yeah,
but
on the spot.
I think that's like a great example because Pete Carroll, while I don't think could survive a 1-win season as long as Urban Meyer has, he would not allow his team to get there, because even the team he inherited from Jim Mora was awful. Like, they had over 200 roster transactions in that first year. They got rid of high-priced veterans. T.J. Houshmandzadeh was like one of the first people to go because he just couldn't cut it in what they wanted to do. You know, they signed Lendell White, and Lendell White thought like, oh, this is my old USC coach. I got it made. He gets cut like right away. Pete's philosophy, and it doesn't apply everywhere because there are certain people that have, you know, built up a reputation, like a Bobby Wagner, like a Russell Wilson. They're not ever going to compete for their jobs. They're just too good. But overall, Pete has created a team philosophy that has allowed them to endure, you know, a 3-8 win season to now a 5-8 win season. So we'll see how far they can take it, though.
Here's a question: when's the last time there was a Lendell White or TJ Who's Your Mama moment, though? Do they still? Is he? I still believe he's into the always compete thing, but would you say it's to the same degree as in the early days? Is there somebody you thought like, oh my God, how is this guy still on the roster, but he still is? Some people have said about coaching, and they say he's overly loyal, but I think that's a more complicated story, and there's more to it in those kinds of situations that we could see. But are there players that you're like, that you feel like they've hung around maybe because of their draft position or because of how much was given to trade for them?
No, I
don't necessarily think so.
I don't believe so either. No,
I think Harvin was still gotten rid of on a timely manner. I think, I don't know.
I mean, like guys like Procise and Penny, you could say that maybe they stuck around a little longer than they would have normally because of where they were drafted. It's debatable at least, right?
I mean, yeah, I think you could say that, but particularly with Penny, I mean, like, he's pretty cheap, and he wasn't injury prone or whatever. I mean, like, we could all argue about the whole concept, but he wasn't injury prone in college,
right?
And so, I mean, I always bring it up: is when 5 things in a row happen, is that actually a pattern, or is it actually random chance? Is it probability sometimes happens that way? So, if you believe it's just probability working out weird, then you're just waiting for that to get over with, and Penny could actually still be really constructive or productive, like maybe last week. Procise, I mean, you get the feeling that Pete Carroll doesn't believe in the whole idea of injury prone, right? Because a lot of people don't. Now, I don't necessarily. There's a certain type of injury I do, but 89% of the time, I don't believe in the term injury prone. So,
sure,
it's just probability.
What I would say is Pete's idea of compete forever is not gone, and like he allows position battles, but there are certain players that have basically earned the right to never compete against another player. Perfect example was a few years ago we brought in Colin Kaepernick in for basically like an unofficial trial. I don't even know if he threw or anything, but they talked to him and they didn't sign him, and when everyone asked, why didn't you sign Colin Kaepernick? Is it because he's kneeling? It's like, and Pete said, no, not at all. We see Colin Kaepernick as a starter, and we already have a starter. We're not going to hoard talent at a premium position when we don't need to.
I don't know if I buy that whole talk this time.
So the one thing I would say is, unless you got Colin Kaepernick at a vet minimum, and unless that was like, yeah, you know, and also like if Pete said like, look, also we don't have the money to sign Colin Kaepernick for his value, I would buy that more than if you say like, hey, we don't need another starter. From the quarterback position, having a second quarterback with a ton of starting experience is really a luxury, and at that time, Russell had already gotten a big contract. So I give a little bit of grace, but to your point, your question, Ross, is no. Pete has certain positions where there is no competition. It's clearly this player's role, and in preseason, yeah, you can get some snaps, but come week 1, it's really Bobby's position. It's really Dwayne's position. It's really Russ's position. Those guys are hard locked into certain positions because we know how good they are already, and the coaches trust that they're going to continue to be that good.
See, that to me is the one slight flaw in that idea. Like, I normally basically agree with you 95% of the time. The problem is people hit walls or people start their decline, and suddenly it's a rapid decline, and it happens suddenly. You don't expect it, and so I think even in preseason, or at least the beginning of preseason, you have to say there's still competition. I would argue that this year, other people, like Brooks probably should have got some starting middle linebacker play in the preseason to see if the defense performed better, worse, or the same with him there. Because if he ends up being like slightly worse as far as vacuum cleaning, but slightly better with big playability, then maybe it's time to make the change. And maybe, preseason you made that trade with Bobby Wagner. I'm being the cold-hearted jerk again today. Sorry, not that I want to get rid of Bobby. I'm just saying that even Russ, you don't know. I mean, he's 32 now, 33, 32.
32. Old man.
Yeah, he's going to turn 33 at the beginning of next year.
And a lot of quarterbacks play until 40 effectively, and one plays until 44. Goddamn. Effectively.
Guy won't die.
Right? But some quarterbacks are mortal, and they drop off at 30 to 35, right? So, and especially with Russ's particular style of play, I know you guys are going to say he's developed into a perfect drop back passer as well, but I don't think so. I think his numbers are there good because, for example, the defenses are playing a certain style, thinking he may still take off. But once he can't take off and everybody knows that it's going to be different. Anyways, you don't know when Russ is going to have his drop off. And so he should have to earn it now. Maybe not too long. Maybe the camp battle's all week. But you still have to honestly say, hey, what does the starting offense look like with not Geno Smith, man. Give me somebody with some upside, but
sure.
Whatever. I like Geno. I don't like the way he always looks confused now he's on the field. Like, he has that perpetual, not even a deer in the headlights look, like literally like he's thinking about what just happened, and really like it's like to him like 2 + 2 = fish, and he just doesn't get it.
Well, here's the question that I want to kind of push us towards to kind of wrap this up is, do you feel like Shane Waldron has made that jump? We've talked about the players, we've talked about like the offense, defense, special teams as a whole. We talk about Pete, and I've been one of the biggest critics of Shane Waldron from like week 2. Do you feel as if Shane is starting to grow and is kind of like given this chance to evolve into what he could be in the future? Because that's what we kind of talk about as players, like, let this player compete for a starting job even though he's going to unseat a tenured veteran. On the offensive side, from a coordinator, you don't have that, but we're seeing it as the season progresses. Is Shane that guy that's going to kind of like grow with the offense and, by the end of it, going to be a great play caller? Like, do you feel that that's what's happening or could happen?
I don't know enough to say. Like, I'm usually slow to critique play calling because there's so much more that goes into it than my stupid little brain comprehends.
I think that's fair.
And designing an offense and that kind of thing. Like,
wait, did Zeb just call himself stupid and Sammy, you said that's fair?
No. I was talking about saying he doesn't trust himself. Like,
yeah, I just don't have the information to make
to really trust that.
I just don't have the information to make an informed opinion. You know what I mean?
You'll
like, I just don't get it.
Able to do this really well. So on the toss play, it was like 3rd and 2. Offense was playing pretty well. The way that they did the formation is they had a strong formation, which means like everyone's pushed towards like the right side of the offensive line. It looks like they're going to use the right side of the line to really get those last 2 yards, and then they do a toss to the weak side in hopes of catching the Texans off guard. Obviously, it sucked. The play didn't work out.
Right.
But from a philosophy standpoint, when you say like, oh, I'm going to try and catch them off guard, I'm showing them this one look, and I'm going to do something completely different, is that something you think is a good play?
Well, so this is what they would call getting cute, and this is the kind of thing that Darrell Bevel used to get crucified for, right? Like, just run the plays that work. You know, whenever you're trying to trick somebody into thinking one thing or another, then it starts to get a little iffy. But no, I mean, but then you run that play, it doesn't work, but now the defense you're playing against has seen it, and maybe they start to expect it, and then you run something else next time. So,
that's the art of the play call. Like, it's not that play. It's. I mean, because you could just easily say, "Oh, like, look, you lined up and you look like you're going to run right, and then you ran right. Oh, you handed off tackle right. Oh, how creative! What could you use a little more imagination?" Okay.
Right.
So then you run it, and then you look like you're going to run right, but then you pitch it left. Oh, well, you're getting too cute now. I mean, like, it's all about the art and the flow of the game. You got to understand, like, what's in the defensive coordinator's mind and, like, what players they have, that's the art of it. And that's the thing that Shane has to get down to. He's got to be able to start to get in the heads, not of his own players, but start to read, what is that defense looking for now? If I got to the point where if I look like I'm running right, they're going to believe that? Or is still a point where, like one of their linebackers is still going to suss this out, in which case I better just do something more, basic. That's the art. But here's the other thing of that. Like, I know exactly the play you're talking about because it's funny that you're saying this because I was immediately thinking to myself, man, he's going to get crucified on Twitter for that play call. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter what your play call is. And this is why, except for Shane this season, except for like sometimes with Norton, I generally don't like to criticize the play call. And like Zeb says, there's a lot of it we don't know. And also, okay, fine, the defense knew what was going on. But you know what? It's still drawn up properly. So if Dwayne Brown beats his guy, and whoever was in at left guard at the time, I can't remember. If he beats his guy, and if everybody still does their job, it's not going to break for 60 or anything, but the play is going to get you 2 yards. Like, beat your man. Beat your guy. So, I mean, almost every NFL play is actually drawn up so it can be successful. There's never a play where the offensive coordinator pulls it up. He's just like, and a small miracle happens right here. And then we get 10 yards. It's all drawn up with something proper in mind.
I don't know. I've seen Russ and Tyler scramble for a few plays. I'm like, you know what?
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. I'm lying because it seems like people are tired of that, but actually that was part of the play a couple years ago, right? We're like, okay, then Russ, you're going to extend and see who comes free. And that's legit. And that's, I think Russ didn't like that either, but like, that's your talent.
But that is Russ's talent. But what's crazy, just really quick, is they hit on 3 of those plays. Tyler's 3 biggest plays were all where Russ ran out of the pocket.
Yes, and if you would just understand that's again, like he wants. Sorry, it drives me insane. He wants to be Peyton Manning, but you're Russell Wilson. Be confident in who you are. There's more than one way to win. There's more than one way to have a legacy. There's more than one way to be the best. You can be the best improviser of all time, and even when you start to lose your mobility, even when your mobility is down to like the level of like a young Ben Roethlisberger, just buy some time in the pocket. You can still do that. You can have 5 more, 6 more years. Just play within yourself, man. Sorry.
All right, we got heated. I apologize. I kind of derailed the conversation, but I figured it was something I wanted to talk about. So we'll push ahead. So I apologize for riling everyone up and then telling everyone to settle down. That's on me. My apologies. We are going to push ahead. We're going to talk about topic number 3. And Zeb, this is the Hawkscast Corner topic. Does the NFL need to revisit its COVID policy? Like 75 players over the last few days have been put on the COVID list. Seattle has 0 players on the list. The Rams have 16. There's all kinds of chatter about the NFL Players Association negotiating with the NFL, trying to figure out, okay, if we can mandate boosters, does that mean we can remove testing requirements? If we get more people vaccinated, can we change the downtime for a positive case and subsequent negative cases? We saw how they handled Aaron Rodgers. We see what happened with someone like Antonio Brown, who got suspended for 3 days by providing a fake vaccine card. Does the NFL need to revisit how they think of COVID here late in the 2021 season?
I mean, I would like to think that the NFL's COVID policy would be sort of an evolving thing based on what's going on with COVID in the world. I'm not even sure what the entire policy is right now, but it's definitely something they should have an eye on what what's actually happening and make decisions and changes based on that. I think, in a sense, the NFL is sort of a microcosm of society with COVID, which is just that I think people are less and less given a fuck about it, and people are willing to say, you know what, I'm going to get it. Let's just move on with our lives. I think a lot of players are probably being far less careful than they were last season. I don't know what changes they would make, what would work, what wouldn't work. We have an interesting weekend coming up with the Rams having so many players at this point at least out. It remains to be seen how many of them will actually play. But yeah, I mean, it should be an evolving concept. It should be something that changes with COVID as COVID changes.
Ross, what about you? You've seen how the emergence of Omicron per CI8 has impacted you in your personal life, and now we have a lot of speculation that a lot of these positive results are due to the new variant.
The Decepticons.
The Decepticons have infiltrated everyone's lungs. Is the NFL even capable of revisiting its policy mid-season without it making it look like its policy is kind of for show, or that it's going to cater to these teams that, got impacted? Because there are a lot of other teams that don't have a huge outbreak.
Well, I'd like to reference the first week of September's podcast, where I said by November, December, we would have games impacted again. And I think I specifically said you risk variants coming out that are more contagious and cannot be stopped or measured, and that when you have a policy where the vaccinated people only get tested every 7 days, you literally make a recipe for infecting entire teams. I actually said, I'm documented this time. It's not just hindsight. I actually sat on this podcast and said, this is what's going to happen. You don't test people, you have breakthrough cases, and it spreads for a week, and then a week later you test everybody, and everybody's got it. Surprise! Yeah, you can change the policy. You have to change the policy right now. If you want to have playoffs, if you want to have a Super Bowl. It kind of doesn't matter, because even though you get the breakthrough cases, if everybody is vaccinated, and Omicron's not that dangerous, it's evolved to spread through everything. But you don't want to be sick for 2 weeks anyway of your life, to be honest. You don't want to miss 2 game checks. You don't want to miss 2 things. I mean, it's not... I mean, you can die, but actually, literally, it was sort of like a big news, like when the first Omicron person died in Britain yesterday. So I'm kind of divided. I think you still have to, again, just because the disease isn't necessarily lethal doesn't mean you don't want to watch it. But I think you have to, again, if you want to have playoffs, because even if you don't die, if half a team literally is too sick to play, you still can't have their playoff game. I mean, Detroit Lions just barely fielded the team on Sunday. Just got on, they woke up that morning because it was COVID plus the flu. And that's the other thing, COVID has gotten slightly less dangerous now. It's gotten probably less lethal, the dominant carries, and so there's a vacuum and there's space there. And so, unlike last year where the flu season was largely skipped in many countries, this year you're going to have probably a pretty bad flu season combined with this. So you're risking all of a sudden 20, 25 people coming up with COVID test positive because you didn't test them for a week. And then if you just happen to have 3, 4, 5 people sick with the flu, which is going to be worse this year. Like I said, now you don't have competitive games, or you have enough people to play the games, but they're missing their star quarterback. It's not good business. So the NFLPA and the NFL need to sit down and go, look, from Christmas, everybody gets tested every day. we can afford the $5 tests. And that'll go a long way. The NFL actually just said today that those daily tests don't help. But that's obviously fucking bullshit, because even countries, they're setting that for their immigration standards. And I kind of trust that more than others. I mean, how could it not help? How could it not help to know who's sick? That's just ridiculous. It's covering their ass.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, literally, when is having information not a good thing?
When you don't want to know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, like, the ostrich with its head in the sand technique rarely works on any kind of disease. So, sure. Go get tested. Yeah. So anyway, that's it's ridiculous. They have to change it. It's imperative that they change it. I don't think people understand. Like, it's usually things are a tipping point. And so people are like, oh, well, it's still sort of okay right now. But no, it's not, because exponential things are going to get worse.
Right.
This does break through. And especially the U.S., you're worse than we are right now, because the U.S. got its vaccines earlier. So that actually works against you now, because people who only have 2 shots, particularly of Pfizer and Moderna, I told you last week, 35 times less. And they officially did the paperwork. It's like 45 times less effective after 4 months.
Yeah. So
you guys are basically not covered right now. You're like at 16% coverage.
Yeah, I got my hazmat suit, right?
But the good news is that there's about to be an oral medicine that stops severe cases. And again, Omicron isn't likely to kill you, great, but you are going to still get sick somewhat, maybe. So, and you're still going to go visit Grandma for Christmas, I hope, because Grandma's been waiting.
Right.
So get your vaccines, your boosters, and my God, can we just be done with this? You're destroying my life.
We will never be done. We will never be done, because the way that I view it is, yes, they should change their policy right away. The problem is, it's going to be 2 opposing forces that don't have like the same interest at hand trying to negotiate.
They all have an interest in the games being played, man.
Like, the NFL and the NFLPA, they're the ones that have to come up with the policy. But I don't think that the NFL will make more grace for the players to feel comfortable to change mid-season. Like, if the current negotiation tactic is, we're going to require everyone to get boosters and we're not going to test you as much, that's like you said, it's putting your head in the sand. The Seahawks say we test at least twice a week, vaccinated or not. So the Seahawks are going above and beyond the limited expectation for the NFL. And because of that, they seem to be better protected. They've only had one person go on the list. I think that was Gerald Everett early in the year, and it was a false positive, and they couldn't get the negative results quick enough for him to play a game. Whereas the Rams, they have all these positive tests, and who knows if they're going to get, any or all of their players back. I think the NFL should revisit its COVID policy, and they should work with the Players Association to push something along, because if they don't, the current policy is going to lock a lot of players out as this rises, as this grows exponentially, and it's going to cause forfeits down the road. If it doesn't cause a forfeit for the Browns or for the Rams this week, there's a great chance that a team is going to have a huge outbreak, and because they don't test every day, like you said, Ross, it might be too late, because if they get Omicron, it's not going to be as deadly, it's not going to be as dangerous, but it's going to spread so much faster, vaccinated or not. And that's the problem that the NFL is facing, and their inability to make a quick decision. Even if that hurts the Seahawks this weekend, it's going to make the playoffs the rest of this year much, much worse. I mean, we joke about last year when the Broncos had to play a game without a quarterback, and that's when teams were probably being the safest they've ever been because there wasn't a vaccine. I can't imagine what that's going to look like in the next 2 to 3 weeks if we can't get a grasp on it and if teams can't better protect themselves.
Man, this could fuck off the whole playoffs if they don't play their cards right.
I was doing some research before the podcast today, and I was on a Rams blog trying to get some information about their COVID and the impact. And there were a couple comments saying like, every team should have an asterisk this year because if we're going to start forfeiting games because of COVID, no team should win a legitimate Super Bowl. Obviously, they're the most impacted because they have 16 players out, but I feel like that sentiment's going to really climb, especially if we see teams that are on the rise have an outbreak and they're just not prepared for it.
Could be rough.
Here's the other weird thing, man. I don't really know if I want. Depends on what protocols they have in place with spacing and stuff like that. I don't know if I really, really, really want like the Seattle Seahawks running through Rams facilities all
right
today.
Right.
Like
you go in and like seal it with like plastic everywhere and like use the medical tape to make sure everything is seared tight and like have your own team sanitize everything.
Sensor in front of you just killing everything in the air. I mean, like, fine, just keep to your side of the stadium, man. Like,
I mean, what's interesting is there's a couple NFL big time media pundits who have said there have been no confirmed cases of COVID being transmitted from a game. It's always been outside of the game that the contact.
I believe that the game itself. The only time I think it's just like we talked about this last year a little bit. The only situation in a game where I think it's a little bit dangerous is pre-snap, where the lineman and the defensive lineman are that close and breathing each other's air.
Right.
But it's still outdoors. There's wind. Even if it's not outdoors, it's really hugely ventilated. It's not really an environment you have to worry about. The locker room is much more of a threat. The saunas, training rooms, coaches' rooms, film rooms,
strip clubs.
Those are all
strip clubs are huge. Huge.
Strip clubs. Well, strip clubs, not the strip clubs themselves, but like those little, like
the champagne room.
Go to I don't know what it's called, but the little room where you get your lap dance or whatever. Yeah, those rooms. Yeah. So yeah, that's why Atlanta's probably a hot spot.
All right. Well, we are going to move along. We got our final topic for the evening, and it is topic number 4: the Los Angeles Rams. And Ross, why does Sean McVay have the Seahawks numbers? So this is his 5th year as a head coach for the Rams.
How many Super Bowls?
One Super Bowl in that time.
How many did he win?
2018 is when they swept the Seahawks. They've only swept the Seahawks once. They do have a chance this year to sweep us again. He is 5-4 all time against the Seahawks, 1-0 in the playoffs, but he has a chance to be 6-4 this year. But why does it feel maybe like Sean McVay has the Seahawks number?
I'm like a weirdo here because I've never, ever, ever felt that he does. I thought it was super weird last year when everybody was frustrated. They beat us in the playoffs. That is frustrating, of course. But everybody last year acted like it was like obviously they're going to kick our ass in it, and they did, and we're just not even in our league because Sean McVay is some sort of wonder kid, and that he's got our number, and like no, we beat him once we beat him 2 weeks before we lost him in the playoffs last year. Like we're playing him almost even. What is it? 4-5.
5-4 right now before the 10th game in the regular season.
So even if we lose this, because this year we're just not as good as them, although I don't know if they can field a team. Like we're 4-6 against like that's not being pwned or whatever the phrase was 10 years ago. Like it's not. It's really, really, really not. That's like 50. That's like a 50-50 battle. Like, and somebody got a bit of a leg up here. It's pretty close, and it's really, really funny that the perception is that he owns it because that's what people use. Like that's why people that's why they wanted Shane Waldron, because look, he's the future of the NFL and he does everything so well and he's so much better and he's so great. Well, if he's got a better roster and he's had better draft picks and he's got a better mind for football and he's so modern, why is he just barely over 500 against our antiquated coach with no new ideas and no offensive line and you can't call a game, blah, blah, blah. Like, you would think if everything they say about him was true, he would have scored more than 3 points in a Super Bowl. and then he absolutely should be ponying us or whatever, and he's not. Sorry, he's not. I mean, do you actually think on Sunday we have no chance? Like, before we go into it, we have no chance. Are we scared? Are we intimidated? I expect it's going to be a close game, and it could go either way. It's going to come down to a couple plays, and if we make them, we win. If we don't, we don't. And yeah, their roster's better constructed, but you know what? Like, we're going on over a decade of really low draft picks where we've had to get over creative, and sometimes it blew up in our face. So we haven't rebuilt our talent so much. Whereas they've gone all in on this year. They bought every single free agent that went on the market, which isn't sustainable. And by the way, despite that, like, Odell Beckham he tested actually properly positive. He's not like a close contact. Odell Beckham properly tested positive for COVID. So today is Wednesday for you. I don't know if he can. I don't know if he can play.
I don't believe he'll be able to get 2 negative tests.
Yeah, he can't get 2 negative tests, and they don't have Robert Woods, so they've got Cooper Kupp at wide receiver,
and they don't have their tight end or their running back.
And all that. Yeah, they're Van Jefferson, I guess, but that dude's developed. I shouldn't have traded him away in fantasy. That was one of my smarter picks. I traded him away because I wasn't patient enough, as usual. Yeah, I can't answer the question, even though I spouted for a half hour, because I just disagree with the premise. I don't think he has our number. I think he's come out ahead, a little bit ahead. But given the reputation of him, you'd expect much, much more, which makes me think it's a lot of overblown. People are so in love with movement. But you know what? Like, that's even stupid. Pre-snap movement can tell you a lot, but there's also something to be said for, like, running 10 different plays out of the exact same formation, the exact same personnel setting. You don't know what's coming. So it's not like everybody's in love with one thing right now, but you can make the case either way. This guy's not that. I've never been that impressed. Sorry, it's not sour grapes. It's really not. When we went to the Super Bowl versus Pittsburgh, call it a wash because refereeing just gets rid of the whole game. Then we win one. Then the next year we go straight back and we lose in essentially the last play. The Rams, under the super amazing coach of the future, go one time and get killed, and their super amazing offense scores 3 points. Right? So what? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm too old.
Time to get off of Ross's lawn. Zeb, what do you think?
Well, what I think is that in, from 2012 to 2015, we kind of got used to the Seahawks pretty much just dominating the division. And so now that, and I think you can say the same thing about the Cardinals as the Rams, they've beat us sometimes, and so then it feels like they're, you know what I mean? We're not dominating them anymore, so it feels like now that they have our number somehow. But really, they've been fairly evenly matched over the recent years. So it's definitely calling anything that they've done down there domination or having our number or anything is overstated. Again, like Ross said, we don't expect to go in and get trounced this weekend. We think we're going to go in and have a fighting chance at winning the game. So I don't think there's any kind of special thing McVay has done for us to believe that he's dominated us. It just hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, and my belief as to why this feels like the Rams or Sean McVay and his Rams kind of kick Seattle's butt is because looking at the stats, going back to 2017, the Rams have always beat Seattle in their last game. So in 2017, the Seahawks lose 42-7. In 2018, they lost 36-31. 2018, we get swept. 2019, we lose in the playoffs 30-20 or to 20. And then this year we haven't beat them yet. So in 4 years to end the year, Seattle's always lost to the Rams in their final game. That leaves a taste in your mouth, and I think to Ross's point, it doesn't feel like when you look at the numbers overall that it's like a huge discrepancy. We're not talking about Seattle versus San Francisco, where Seattle constantly just has San Francisco's number. Like we swept San Francisco this year. But the Rams, because they win the last matchup of the year, it leaves that taste in your mouth, and I think that's why people feel. The other thing is they have Aaron Donald, which is one of the most dominant players in the NFL, just historically
in the regular season.
Yeah, like what this guy does, it's unreal. He has the most sacks against Russell Wilson of any player. You know, obviously playing twice a year helps, but yeah, he eats Russell Wilson for dinner in the last game of the year. Now that's what people remember.
If it said why does he have our number, that's a conversation, because you could say that Aaron Donald seems to play better against Russell Wilson than he normally. I mean, he's always a dominant player, of course, except in the playoffs, in my opinion. But he does seem to step up against Russell Wilson in particular. But again, that's probably due to Russell Wilson's style and like what his strengths are. It's interesting. But going to the main point, it feels more like it's just like you're kind of saying, it's a function of the schedule more than anything that's creating the perception.
Yeah, and I think that in itself is what makes it seem so crazy, you know, because Aaron Donald is 10-5 against the Seahawks in his career. He's got 14 sacks in 15 games. He's got 22 tackles for loss, 40 quarterback hits, and 2 forced fumbles.
That implies there was a game he didn't have a sack. I don't remember that.
According to Pro Football Reference, he has multiple games without a sack, but he has almost as many games with more than 1.5 sacks. So, but yeah. So
what's that dude's contract?
Hopefully,
I hope they're way overpaying for. I hope they're way overpaying for that production.
I hope so too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I mean if he's the Rust Killer, it might be all right. According to Sport Track, he is in. Let's see, he's got 3 years left, and he signed a 6-year, $135 million contract.
Yeah,
6-year what?
6-year, $135 million contract. So his cap hit for this year is $14 million, and then for the next 3 years it's 26, 23, 23.
They can't afford that.
I mean, they can't afford anything, but you know, they make the money somewhere.
Bizarre. Okay, cool. All right, sorry to derail the conversation.
I think that's a fair point. All right, well, that is our conversation. Those are our topics for this evening. So we're going to get going, and we're going to get some predictions in here. So, Ross, we're going to hit you up with some predictions first.
That's
so,
right.
What is going to be the final score? Seahawks at Rams.
God, it's so hard to say because you don't know who's going to play. Our defense is playing pretty well. And I don't think Stafford plays particularly well against us usually. 24-17. Seahawks. I said it.
Oh, there you are. The optimism is back.
Ooh, there it is.
Yeah. Foolish optimism.
Zeb, what's your final score?
Seahawks 29-27.
Close. Nail biter. The Rams are a 4.5 point favorite right now. So I feel like, I don't know if that's too low or not.
That's interesting because they're home team.
They're the home team, but maybe they're accounting for all of the 16 players that are not going to be able to suit up. But yeah.
Holy shit, dude. I want to get a whole list of that. I just tried to find the comprehensive list, and I can't find one.
You can find it at hawkscast.net. There's like 2 tweets that have the most current players that are...
Oh, you mean the website I'm supposed to be at? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That website that you pay for? Yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
My final score, I'm going to go and say it's a middling score, but I'm going to say the Seahawks lose 24-27. Aaron Donald, I feel, is really good, and I don't love the matchup of Ethan Posick versus Aaron Donald, so
It's not awesome.
It's not awesome. Who is going to have more yards, though? Rushing, receiving, passing? Russell Wilson or Matt Stafford? Zeb.
Sorry, what?
Who's going to have more yards? Russell Wilson or Matt Stafford? Zeb.
Zeb?
Yeah.
That's me. Stafford.
Ross?
Yeah, by the nature of our offense, yeah. That's true.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Stafford. I think that if they don't have a running game, they're going to rely a lot on Cooper Kupp and a lot of screen yards. The hope is that we can shut them down in the red zone, but I think Matt Stafford's going to have a ton of yards that day. Zeb, who's going to have more rushing attempts? Rashad Penny, Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, Adrian Peterson?
I'm going to say Rashad Penny with my fingers crossed that he doesn't get hurt on his first carry.
I'll cross my fingers for you. Ross, who you got running the rock?
When you said Adrian Peterson for a second, I thought you were on drugs, and I remembered he's on our team.
Practice squad, so Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. That's so bizarre. It's got to be Penny, right? I hope I'm not cursing him with this, but I mean, like the coach even this week said, yeah, he's earned a right to show us if he can be like the bell cow. So let's do it, man. Stay healthy, man. I'm a believer, sort of, kind of.
I think if he can be healthy, yeah, he's the kind of player that you really need to run him like 15 times because twice he's going to break like a big play, and he did that in the last week game. So I hope that continues. It's really up to Rashad Penny to stay healthy and available. But if he can, yeah, I like Penny getting the most rushing attempts. Zeb, over under 5.5 targets for one to Kalen Metcalf.
Over.
Ross?
Under.
Jalen Ramsey is not active as of now. So
I know, but I just think it's Lockett's show this year, man. Like DK's gonna have his time, but it's just not in the cards for him this year. Probably because I drafted him everywhere.
Yeah. I'm going to be more wishful, and I'm going to follow Zeb and say DK is going to get more than 5.5 targets. I feel like this is a game that he wants to show up. I feel like DK wants to make it so that people can't talk about his low production against the Rams.
Fair enough.
Zeb, over under 9.5 Rams returning from the COVID list.
Under.
I'm going to just trust Zeb and say that too, because I just don't have the information. I need to go inform myself and educate myself about their whole disaster here.
Sean McVay says every player who has been put on the list is vaccinated. I don't know if it's Aaron Rodgers immunized vaccination or if it's actual. I'm going to say
it's probably true because Omicron doesn't care about your vaccination.
Right. I'm going to say under for now. I might change it before the game.
Nope, no takebacks.
Okay. Well, it's locked into the podcast, so it's locked up. And the final prediction for the night, Zeb and Ross, over under 1.5 missed Myers field goal or PAT attempts.
What is up with that dude?
Under. He's going to get it together this week. We're going to need it.
It's weird how kickers just have like an expiration date and you have no idea when it is. It's over because that dude sucks now and it's just done. Like kickers have like an expiration date and you have no idea when it is. It's like running down like a street and you have no idea when it's going to turn red. Yep. There's no yellow; it just turns red all of a sudden. And wherever you are, that's where the kicker stops. Like that's what he was.
I'm going to say under. He's still going to miss one PAT or one field goal, but it's going to only be one and not 2 or 3.
It's going to be 2, man.
All right. I think that's a fair prediction. I'm more wishful thinking than anything else.
I'm here for it.
And gentlemen, that is our show for the evening. Time for some shout-outs.
Oh, I got a shout-out. boy, do I have a shout-out. Shout-out to Daryl Bevel, the interim head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Shout-out.
And to Brian Schottenheimer, the quarterbacks coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I imagine possibly elevated to offensive coordinator in the interim. Ooh. I guess we'll see.
Could you imagine if they go 4-0 these last 4 games, how great that would look for them?
I'm so rooting for it.
So James Robinson over under 20 carries this week.
He better be over, man. I mean, I don't know what Urban Meyer and maybe it was Shoddy or Belleville holding him back, but they gotta give him the ball somehow.
I don't know, I was so mad back in August, and actually, I was mad in April, like when they had James Robinson, then they take my French sucks. Etienne,
yeah,
like is their first pick or whatever in the first round. I'm like, you have James Robinson. Like from the beginning, Urban Meyer just did not like James Robinson. I had him in my team. I traded him away in a panic before like everything happened, and basically Urban Meyer was forced to use him somewhat. And then like all of a sudden, oh, you know what? Last year wasn't a fluke. He's still really, really good, and you're a jerk for not using him, holding him back. Oh, it was so bad. Anyway, yeah, go Jaguars. My shout out is to Santa's elves, hard at work. Like 8 or 9 days left up there in the freezing cold North Pole. Get it done.
Nice.
Get a union. Get a union. Elves unionize.
Union elves.
We are the Hawkscast.net podcast. Please check us out at hawkscast.net. Go find us at Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross, and I'm Sam. Find us on the tweet machine. Find us online. Find us anywhere you can. Talk to us, ping us, tweet us, slide into our DMs. Thank you for listening. Shout out to Birdfinger. Shout out to Khan for firing Urban Meyer. It happened like 5 weeks later than I thought it was, but I'll take it. We wish you all a go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.